So for this next part of the drawing, we're gonna just we're gonna ink, but as we ink, we're gonna tighten up the pencils just a little bit more. So I'm just still be using my pencil. I usually use a big kind of fat Sharpie or brush pen if you have it. And I'm just using a micron 05 as well as a 01 for the details. You can just use a regular pen if you have them, that's fine as well. So what I like to do is I'm going to, again, start down here with this main character. You know, I'm going to just pick out some of the big black spots on him. So obviously the eyes. And then right before, sometimes I'll just freehand it and just go with it. But other times I might just pencil it out a little bit. But I want to add a bit of shadow on his face or on this creature's face. So I kind of draw out an area which is going to be black, but I kind of just draw the shape of it. It's all black there, and then kind of just adding a little bit more detail to the costume and what I'm going to do. Kind of areas where I know I want to have a lot of black. So I know just within his forehead here. So a lot of shading for characters' faces usually you just put it on half of his face. So I did like about half of that face there. I'm going to go back and forth. I'm going to use a thicker pen in 05. If you just use a regular pen at home, that's just as well. You can just go a little bit harder on it. So I know this is the main focal point. So he might have some pretty thick lines to understand that this is the extreme foreground here. So you could go ahead and just for a lot of this, I'm just kind of going over my main pencil drawing. But again, like we learned the first lesson last time, I like to just draw the different folds of the body instead of just a straight line through it. So I just kind of run around this lumpy squid head. So now I'm going to go work on the costume a little bit more. I know he has some sort of kind of shoulder pads, and then it's weird squid hand. I'm just going with the folds here. And then I understand that this kind of finger's going over it. Now I'm going to work on this laser thing. So a lot of this will just be kind of ovals topped on with tunnels and all kind of just different shapes. You know, I could just add in whatever kind of flair I want throughout it. I know this tentacle's wrapped around this part right here. So I drew the tentacle first, and now I'm going to draw the kind of barrel of this laser gun. And then it goes into like a bit of a sleeve right here, maybe like a button on it there. And then, you know, maybe let's give it like some kind of plus sign, interesting looking buttons. So when you add little details, you can kind of just, you know, look for reference, look at your own clothes or own fashion ideas, architecture, just different textures within nature, things like that, just to add in your own little flair to it and your own style. So I added some tentacles in there. You know, I don't know, this is just some sort of made up space gun. I'm going to black a lot of that out. Maybe I'll add a couple squiggly lines. We know it's like some sort of material. Let's add a black right through the middle part there. And then maybe heavy blacks for like the rest of the barrel. So this is the main character. You could go over it a bit more just to kind of really thicken up the line for some of the things. I know his face is kind of sticking out the most. So I'm just going over my line. Usually I like to make one side fatter than the other. So in this one I have a lot of the left side of things. I'm going to go over and really thicken up those lines. I'm going to leave the right lines alone. And just even with on his face, just, working on the different folds of it. Just to like bulk it up a little bit more. So we really know this character is the extreme foreground, the right in front of us, real thick lines. And some lines, so I'll leave this tentacle line. This one's going to be thick, but it's going to be just thicker than the barrel that it's holding itself. So let's work on what's going on behind him. I'm just going to stick with the 5. I'm not going to go right to the 1 yet. I know there's this little like kind of walkway coming out at a diagonal, and it's like a kind of a big bubble. So this is all sci-fi architecture. I can kind of do whatever I want with it, because you could just always say, oh, it's like in the future, it's the made-up world. There's really no wrong way to do it. But if you're going to be working on something that's that you want to be based in reality or some sort of historical accuracy, you're going to have to look up reference of architecture, costumes, what they would wear at the time, things like that, to try to stay within it, to just stay within the reality of your drawing. But with fantasy and kind of superhero, science fiction stuff, they really, you make the rules for whatever happens in that reality, right? So I started out with that. I drew that window there first. I kind of drew over with the door a little bit. I'm just going to, squeeze out maybe another window right in here, and maybe they're kind of connected. Redo this bottom line there. So like I said, as I go, I like to just kind of play around with it and just add things as I see. So now I'm just going to make it kind of like a whole slew of windows right there. And then maybe I'll add a couple more gadgets on the side of this. Whatever it is. It doesn't even matter. It's some sort of satellite thing. It's some sort of a tower. Who knows? So now I can just go right. So again, I picked up my pencil for a second there just to go back to the pen. So a lot of times when you're inking, you can just keep going back and forth between the different types of pens and the different types of areas within the drawing, and pencils too. So a lot of this I'm just kind of tracing over what I drew. Sometimes you might want to break out the rulers to go a little further with it to kind of make it even, but I'm just doing this for the sake of brevity here so you kind of understand where you want to go with this. With your own drawings. So again, this doesn't have to be what you're drawing at all. You could be working on some sort of brickwork in like a regular looking building, or maybe you're drawing the texture on a tree right now. So I drew these different squares in here, so I'm just going to do different kind of squiggles of black through them. Just something fun. And when you're drawing lips and stuff around objects, I drew this pipe here, and then I drew what's covering it, and then I went around it and around again. So you kind of have that little lip to lead the eye give it a little bit more dimension to it. So sometimes when you're going to draw a big straight line, you're going to draw what you're drawing it to. So I drew the end of it right there to go to it. I'm doing these kind of little scallops to make it just a little architectural flair. Whatever kind of style you feel like going for. So I know that's kind of like the tip of it. It just goes off camera there. So I could go back and forth with the black as well. Let's go into these windows a bit more. So whenever you have kind of big open black areas, just use like a Sharpie or your brush pen or brush, whatever you need to use. You don't want to waste any of your pen like little detail pen ink with filling in large areas of black, because those are meant for details, and you don't want to waste your time uh, doing details with something big. All right, so now I just kind of had fun with those windows there. Fill that little spot in. So maybe I'll move over to these characters over here a little bit as well. So now let's go back. We got the front of the car here. I'm just going to work on these different kind of lights in the corner. You know, and then whenever you draw things, you just start off with shapes and then just go further into it with more and more detail kind of sticking out. Then maybe a little stippling in the middle there. So I know this has a lot of kind of lines coming out of it that are like speed lines to represent that it's like racing through the air. So I'm going to draw those first because I know I don't need to draw the actual car within those lines itself. So like I just drew those out, so maybe now I could draw the in-between stuff of where the car is. So now I'm going to work on this character, Middleground character. He's driving the car, or kind of sitting while the car is driving itself. Make his visor. You know, whatever kind of weird mask he's got going on here. It's almost like a samurai mask. And kind of pronged. Maybe this is a mohawk, or maybe he's kind of like an alien with horns coming out of his head. You know, it's really up for, I don't really care what the reader decides. It could be either one. So maybe I'll add a little bit more heavy detail within his costume or his clothing. He kind of has a t-shirt on. Heavily black that out. So now I'll draw the window right here. So again, with most things like windows or doors, not just one line, just add another extra line to it. Now I could draw, you know, kind of what a door idea, what a door would be on this thing. And the seat that he's sitting in. So he's just going to kind of go into the blackness. I know this is a big seat right here. So I'm filling in a heavy butter black here. And it kind of goes into his t-shirt. It doesn't matter where his legs are. I'm not really worried about any of the imagery down there. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my pencil again. Let's work on this bird alien again. So maybe let's make it a little bit more alien. Maybe he's got 3 eyes, one kind of antenna eye. And then maybe he's got some sort of like alien vest thing on throughout his chest. He's kind of got little bird flappy things. And then it will also go into black. So let's work on the tech thing here. So again, I like to start off with a variety of circles, maybe within like a square, and just kind of add things around it as you go, just more and more detail. So I know it's like some sort of like belt, alien belt thing that's on the main part of its body. And then now I can work on the actual face and stuff too as well. And, you know, this is a cartoon, so I'm going to give it pretty funny, cartoonish, like weird little feathers sticking out of the side. Big bird eyes. And then one alien eye. Maybe some little feathers in there. And then this is going to go into black. I'm going to lightly do a kind of around a Sharpie, but finish it off with my micron. I don't want to mess up the imagery of the window there. So fill that in black. So, finished off at least the detail of kind of where the main parts of the car. I could go into it a little bit more when I break out the one. We'll go into that in a minute. Not quite yet. So maybe now I could just work with like the kind of big black areas I know I'm working with. So I noticed, no, this whole corner area right here, that's going to be blacked out. So I'm just doing this real quick. I don't even know if I'll get to completely finish blacking all this stuff out, but I'm just showing, like, you know, as you're thinking about your next move, your next step, you could just go ahead and black stuff out. So maybe I'm going to go and do the tech on this kind of stoplight, floating stoplight in the sky. You know, I just do a lot of ovals, a lot of squares. Everything's just going to kind of have a rounded edge to it. And then we have this rocket pack person flying around in the background here as well. So all this stuff I've just been using the same pen, the 05. But just in a moment, let's add a little bit of detail. So this is the rocket character kind of flying through the background. Again, don't finish out their body. They're just going to turn into speed lines themselves. So that kind of laid out all the main parts to ink out of this drawing. I have most of the main characters, the main focal points, drawn out with the 5 pen. I kind of laid out where all the heavy blacks are going to be. And the next part we're going to do is do a lot of the small details.